when we talk about finance professionals at any stage of their careers, one of the biggest superpowers we have is the credibility that we provide an organization.
Absolutely.
Our role as stewards of the business give us the solid grounding that we need. Technical skills provide the foundations of that.
Hello and welcome to the Journey to CFO, ACCA's new podcast where we explore the real stories behind the title. In each episode, we'll be speaking to leading CFOs across the profession to uncover their successes, their challenges and lessons that they've learned in their journey to become a CFO. I'm your host, Rachel Shorter, CFO and founder, and today I'm joined by Rajiv Chandra, FCCA. Welcome to the seat and welcome to ACCA's podcast. Let's just go on and just talk about a little bit your background. Rajiv Chandra is a Director of Finance and Analytics and Value Creation at Virgin Media O2, where he leads initiatives focused on turning analytics and AI and big data into commercial value. With more than 20 years international experience across finance transformation and operational efficiency, senior leadership roles at Sky, Procter & Gamble, performing high analytics capabilities and driving strategic decision. He also holds an executive MBA and a graduate at University of Cambridge, and he's passionate about innovation, leadership and evolving role of finance and business. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So we're going to start right from the beginning. So when we spoke about studying for ACCA and your journey and the involvement of that journey, because initially you was meant to be an engineer. We've done an engineering degree. So just talk me about like when you started studying and where it all started from, and did you imagine that your career was going to end up this way?
Yeah, and I think, look, starting off when I was studying engineering, Rachel, as we discussed, I love the fact that you can have a tangible impact on a process, a business, or anything you're trying to build. I came from a family of entrepreneurs back in Delhi, India, and I felt that being part of the commercial sort of running of a business, so important to have a qualification that grounds you with the numbers.
Yeah.
Understanding the numbers and understanding, look, how do changes to the way you operate your business have a clear, direct, tangible impact on outcomes?
Exactly.
And I felt ACCA provides a phenomenal platform for that. It's a globally recognized qualification that provides you education, grounding beyond just technical finance. And from my perspective, I felt it was absolutely game-changing, especially at the start of my career. But as I've grown and taken on roles that have been above and beyond just technical finance or reporting, I think the strategic elements of what we learned through the ACCA program have been phenomenal.
Oh, brilliant. And another thing that really inspired me when we had our conversation was that innate feel for entrepreneurship when you went back to Delhi and you ran the business and then you came back and you went into one of the big firms. How did that help shape your career?
Yeah, I think it was a very good lesson for me in not all careers being linear in terms of growth, trajectories, how you learn. I think what has been really important for me is the sort of benefit of learning from each and every experience. I started off my career at Grant Thornton in audit. And we mentioned a slight family setback. I had to go back to India. I worked in my father's business, set up a small business that I exited. And then I came back to the UK. My family, or my wife was here working as an actuary in the city, and I was in India trying to run a couple of businesses. And I think one of the key sort of learnings was when I came back, I went to a graduate role at Procter & Gamble, very different from being a director in my family business back home or running a business myself. And what it taught me was, look, resilience is critical.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think how we think about managing modern businesses, teams is almost not too dissimilar from sports teams. You know, we want to put the right people in the right positions for sustained growth. I think similarly for myself at the start of my career, it was utilizing all of those learnings from my engineering background, a bit of entrepreneurship in India, but also being extremely curious. And again, I think having grounding in a finance qualification like ACCA helped me pivot at the right times.
Oh, perfect. So we started off in audit. And so, again, we took like a pivot and a shift. What triggered that pivot and shift for you to come into commercial? Because you're very commercially driven. You don't just look at the numbers and look backwards. You're forward looking. Your transformation, you're innovative with what you're doing, especially when it comes to analytics. When did that pivot happen?
Yeah, and I think from starting off a career in audit at Grant Thornton, I met lots of incredible SME owners, businessmen, entrepreneurs, and it was quite clear that the ambition that they harbored sort of fueled their passion. And I've learned quite early on in my career, also seeing my father run his business successfully for several decades. He
Yeah.
loved what he did, and I thought it's so important to find sort of purpose, meaning, and passion in
Yeah.
what you're doing or what you're trying to develop as a career. Working at Grant Thornton in audit and then going back to India for a bit taught me, or at least enabled the joys of entrepreneurship, but also having a clear view or a vision of how important the numbers are for the success of an organization and what tangible changes as an entrepreneur can you make to drive an organization forward. It's at that point I felt value creation, data analytics, being solid or having a solid grounding in the financials and the key sort of construct of what makes up those numbers was critical for me. And I felt that's what helped me make the shift from someone who worked in the technical side of things or reporting the numbers
Yeah.
to how do we work as part of the business or the finance function and actively impact the numbers. And hence, value creation, operating efficiency sort of became
Yeah.
core parts of the business I was interested in.
Yeah. One thing we don't quite touch on a lot of the time when we talk about the difference between when we shift between like technical and analytics is the technical grounding and the knowledge of what the technical exams through ACCA gives us in our journey to CFO. Do you think that helped you now in terms of how you read data, what the data's giving you? How has that technical skill like enabled you in your career?
I think, look, when we talk about senior finance professionals, also finance professionals at any stage of their careers, one of the biggest superpowers we have is the credibility that we provide an organization.
Absolutely.
Our role as stewards of the business, both financial and of course as in terms of governance, etc., give us the solid grounding that we need. Technical skills provide the foundations of that.
Yeah.
So I felt from my perspective, having a view of how the numbers are constructed, statutory reporting, how important that is,
Yeah.
but also providing an organization with that layer of stewardship and governance provides us with a solid foundation we need to impact and own that seat at the table.
Exactly.
And I felt the more senior you become,
Yeah.
grounding and having an understanding of the numbers, but equally of the things that help you enable a shift in those numbers is pivotal.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And I think what's happening at the moment is that we're seeing more of a hybrid. So you have to have the analytical mindset, but also have to have the technical like grounding and anchor, because you cannot have one without the other. You cannot help shift a business, especially and drive it commercially forward without kind of bonding the two. So I really liked what you said, what we spoke about there. So now we're in the seat. We've seen our career go from audit into leadership, and you're on your firm journey to FD. So let's talk about, now that you're sat in that seat, did you wish you had any conversations, or what kind of led to you being more confident in your role as a senior leader?
Yeah, I think, look, it's extremely important, I feel, as leaders of any organization, especially when you're part of the finance function, to care about the business. And from my perspective, I was fortunate to see my father run a business successfully, but also incredible mentors both at Sky and VMO2 as part of my journey. So watching them run the business successfully, challenging the status quo, debiasing the organization, these become core parts of any leader's journey. So whilst I've been really fortunate to have some excellent mentors along the way that have taught me how to be a leader, I think what is incredibly important is the people centricity that I have tried to work on over the last sort of decade or so.
Okay.
Making sure that an ecosystem is created where we are enabling, almost like servant leadership, where we are enabling the organization to succeed, provide the right platform for growth for each and every individual, especially in teams that I've had the good fortune of running.
Yeah.
And I think that provides an environment which is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's really important to me. So whilst we talk about, look, analytics from a historical or current perspective, really important. You know, we think about self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, influencing people, all the principles. Daniel Goleman does a very good job of an emotional intelligence framework, and we talk about that a little bit. But I think equally when we fast forward to the future, look,
Yeah.
the workforce will have not only humans, but there'll be a synthetic element. We'll all have likely analytics, automation, AI helping us form part of the human and the synthetic workforce. When we look at the future, it's also about ensuring that there's the right data, quality of data, governance, and AI ethical guardrails in place. So I think as a leader, what I'd love to know more about is how do we manage the future. I think
Yeah.
from the current team management, organizational leadership perspective, it's just making sure we provide the right environment and ecosystem for people to succeed.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things you really touched on there that I really liked was about mentorship. And a massive influence in my career was my mentor, who I still speak to today. And God bless him, he lives in Cornwall. I visit him once a year. He gave up his seat at the table to put me into a boardroom, and he's never regretted it. And he inspired me so much that it became almost like the anchor word and anchor slogan that I always speak of. So you never make a good sailor on calm waters. So he was always teaching me how to take the rough with the smooth. And I think someone's voice can just shift your perspective, especially in your career. We spoke about people coming from different economical backgrounds and having that opportunity, and it just takes one spearhead, one good spirit, one voice that can just inspire us to keep going. Let's just touch on like mentorship and on your journey to CFO. Anyone in particular or any people in particular that inspired you?
Yeah, and I think, look, I've had the great fortune of witnessing from very close quarters some phenomenal leaders, and
Yeah.
it'll do injustice if I just mention one, but there've been a group of people, and I think, look, why that's so important, or mentorship, or watching from close quarters people you respect and have made a difference to organizations, so important, because sometimes when you come from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, as we discussed, Rachel, you may not have in your immediate vicinity people that you can aspire to be like. You might not be in close quarters to people who are CFOs, leading exec of multi-billion pound organizations, or equally, you may not have access to SME owners who've made it big or have been successful. So to be able to work in close quarters with some of the exec committee at both Sky and Virgin Media O2, I've tried to integrate, all of the sort of positives that I see from those relationships. I think sometimes mentors can believe in you or see something that you can't.
Yes.
And it's that push, and as you mentioned, sometimes a different perspective that can really fuel your career. I think from my viewpoint, it was almost, how can I empower myself to create the largest value for an organization that has pushed me above and beyond the titles, and the good fortune of running some large-sized teams. But the most important thing, I think, from my perspective, is making sure that the organization can benefit. So whilst we think about, exactly as you said, the right mentorship in place, or the people that can help you along your journey, I think it's also so important to be self-aware and to understand the gaps that exist within your armory, and to regularly seek out people who can complement you. And now it might be mentors who can coach you on how to deal with, focusing on your strengths, but it could equally be people that work for you in your teams and you hire in the right spirit, who can, complement your style of leadership. So again, if we round back to, what makes an effective leader is someone who is self-aware. I think that's one of the best qualities you might want to inculcate, making sure that you are aware of what the team needs. How do you galvanize everyone behind a singular vision? And how do you then continuously provide the ecosystem for growth and development? Now, it's not about being mentored by senior individuals. It could also be reverse mentoring from some of the newest members of your organization. I routinely talk to people about the newest AI tools, data analytics, how the landscape, especially as I now work in the telco, media, entertainment sectors, how the sector is evolving and how we can stay ahead of the curve. So both from a senior and sort of new age mentorship point of view, super important.
No, absolutely. So we're talking about teams and inspiring our teams. When did you realise that it's more than just the numbers, it's about the people as well?
People are the most important part of an organization and will continue to be. Now we're going through the AI sort of revolution where we are constantly talking about replacing people or thinking about automation. I view this as one of the best stages of our evolution to be able to utilize technology as collaborators, but to enable people to do even more.
Yeah.
To have the right judgment, to be more creative, to empower people to be able to do more.
Yeah.
I started realizing, Rachel, that as we said, the right environment for people to thrive is super important. Very early in my career, again, I've seen, people create businesses with the right ecosystems in place when we want to deliver more than just what we can do ourselves. And as leaders, sometimes we feel we might have all the ideas, but the reality is we are biased through the experiences that we've been part of. And debiasing ourselves through the lens of our teams is important, but equally making sure that we are progressing as an organization, creating that ecosystem for people to be more successful than we might have been is increasingly important. But what gives me the most joy is when someone in my team comes up with an idea that I could never have conceived. What's most important to me is making sure everyone's on the same journey. So we galvanize, provide the vision as leaders, provide the environment so people can succeed, and seeing the fruits of that is extremely fulfilling.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I must say, when I was on my journey, and it wasn't a linear trajectory, but becoming a leader, I think that flip between being led to now being the leader was probably the biggest step for myself, because the buck kind of stops with you at the top. And we don't always get it right. Sometimes we make mistakes. There's challenges along the way. And what's really amazed me when I look back now at the journey to CFO was that the team that I have today is not the team that I need tomorrow. When it comes to skill, when it comes to technology, when it comes to qualifications, we have to keep evolving, not just with the business, but with the micro environment that the business is in as well. So if you're in manufacturing, you're looking at different technologies, you're looking at robotics, how things will work faster. How does that lead into the numbers? And one thing I wasn't prepared for is making mistakes. Making mistakes with my team as a leader. You have to sit down and only have sometimes your own thoughts to play with. Any mistakes along the way for you as a leader?
Yeah, I think, look, countless. And I feel that as a good leader, our role is to keep learning.
Yeah.
And, enable curiosity for ourselves, for our teams. I think the thing that I've learned is an open dialogue with your team is critical.
Yeah.
And sometimes from a business context, we're always thinking, look, if we're not failing, we're not trying hard enough. So we're always have a mixed portfolio of initiatives. If we think about value creation or operating efficiency, some might be really difficult, but have large scale returns. Equally, some may be bread and butter, and we're quite used to delivering value from a certain type of cost efficiency or value creation initiatives. But the most important thing is to not fail when it comes to people. And I think, look, it's along the journey you learn that openness, being self-aware, as we mentioned, regulating ourselves, our moods, it becomes incredibly important, because what you say can have such a profound impact on people, both positive and negative. As we mentioned, look, the role of mentors is to make sure that they do the positive bit of that. But sometimes as a leader, we have to take stock of how we've performed, what mistakes we've made in the past, learn from them. But having that open dialogue with your team, asking for feedback, making sure that we are improving how we deal with certain situations. And look, especially when we're thinking about financials, numbers, budgets, month ends, long range planning, all the activities we do, it can sometimes be peaks and troughs which we're going through. As leaders, our role is to make sure that we are regulated throughout the process. So we're taking time off, we are reviewing our goals, understanding where we'd like to be in a 3, 5, 10-year period. And then for ourselves, but also for our teams, providing that cover as needed.
You touched on a really important point there. It was just about taking time off, so re-energizing yourself. And we tend to forget that outside of the title and the role of CFO, we're still humans. We're still people that function in our family lives. And I wanted to touch on that because one of the things we spoke about was that you're a sportsman, and that takes rigor, discipline, skill, all those things that you can pour in. So what happens in your life outside of finance?
Brilliant. Thank you for asking. I've got 4 young kids. My oldest is 13, twins are 11, youngest is 4, all avid cricket fans. So if I'm not at work, I am either chauffeuring them or training my kids in cricket. I train a young boys cricket team, which I thoroughly enjoy. But a lot of my time is spent with the kids. Now, it might be, as we were saying, either holidays, traveling, playing cricket, or just spending time with them.
Yeah, I know, perfect. And we have to get that balance right, because a hell of a lot of our time is spent in the boardroom, in the workspace, working on numbers that have nothing to do with family life. So that brain power that it takes, it's really good to get the downtime. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
And I think, Rachel, you touched upon this, and I think it's so important. Look, a good leader has a balance of EQ and IQ. And it's that IQ can keep going in periods when we're under pressure, when we're stressed, when we might have had long nights for a sustained period of time. But sometimes that EQ diminishes.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to reinvigorate, to read, to take time off, to travel, to make sure that we're on top of our game. And we owe it to our teams to make sure that we provide the right environment for them.
No, I agree. Absolutely agree. So I want to touch on a couple of setbacks, and we spoke about a few. And when we see some CFOs, especially when we see them on LinkedIn or we see them in their work environment, we never stop to think about, hold on a minute, I wonder if this journey was a tough journey for them. Any tough points in your career for you?
Several. So, as we discussed, I've been in commercial finance or working in commercial finance for 20 odd years. There are times when we have peaks and troughs of delivering core financial processes or results, or working with different stakeholders. Some might be difficult to at times work with. And the challenge is, how do you think of the long-term vision of where you're trying to head to?
Yeah.
And the skills that you're trying to develop along the way. So, for an accountant, we mentioned the technical side of things, commercial business partnering, making sure we understand now analytics more than ever before, AI tools and so on. So I think sometimes it's just realizing what is important for my own personal growth beyond the titles.
Yeah.
And focusing on how we can think about, us in the future.
Yeah.
And pick up those medals, bows, strings along that journey. Now, there'll be lots of setbacks. We may not be delivering numbers at the right time, or the right numbers, or the growth of the organization may not be where you'd expected it to be. As a finance director of value creation or operating efficiency, there'll be lots of targets and challenges that my team will have to generally work with. But I think if we think of the macro perspective of managing our own careers or our lives, what's really important is we don't lose sight of where we are headed, not where we are. And sometimes I think those setbacks, those challenges make us a stronger and a more resilient person. And again, I use the sports analogy, not dissimilar. Sometimes the losses make you stronger and set you up to be a super successful winner in the future. So the way I think about it is, look, every profession has several challenges. It's how you take them on board for a stronger future. And is it providing you with the skill set to succeed?
Absolutely. One of the things you just touched on at the moment was about success, or even your career being just beyond the title. And we spoke a little bit about this before, but when we're thinking about success and we're defining success, beyond the titles, beyond the compensation, what does success look like to you in terms of a successful career?
Yeah, I think the way I think about a career is twofold. One is, of course, linked to, look, the organizations we're working for, the type of work we're doing, is it fulfilling or not? What's the balance of growth versus what we're doing at a particular stage in time? But the more important sort of part of it is, how is it growing me as an entrepreneur or as an individual, as a finance professional? Is it aligned to my vision and goals? And how am I able to create the right impact, not just for the business, Rachel, but also for the stakeholders? What about the society? Are we part of an ecosystem where we are a net positive contributor? And that comes from, of course, if you do a good enough job, fingers crossed, everything else follows, the compensation, the titles. What's most important is, do I have the right skill set to provide value to an organization? Now, we discussed in the past that your growth normally isn't and doesn't have to be linear. There might be sideways steps. Sometimes you might feel that, look, I need to go away and learn more about the commercial runnings of a business, not just the financial or the technical accounting parts of it. There might be elements now where we feel, look, analytics and data is a world, innovation, where we'd want to be more and more involved in. And I guess from my perspective, I feel, look, am I growing in all the areas that I think make me a successful leader in the future? And if that's going in the right way, I would normally worry less about some of the other elements, and we hope that they follow anyway.
No, I think that's a really important and key point there, is that when we're thinking about our journey, especially in leadership, it's not always a forward step or a higher step. Sometimes that sideward step is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than stepping up, because you're learning about the breadth of everything. You can't lead your team and lead a business and lead side by side with a CEO if you don't have the full breadth of everything, not just the skill, but the mindset as well. So those sideward steps are just as important as those upward steps.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason why, look, we almost always talk about the CFO's role as being one of the most important in the business alongside the CEO, probably the second most important role in almost any business. And look, whilst providing stewardship of the numbers gets you a seat at the table, it's having a true impact on the business.
Correct.
That enables you to add value, but also to be seen a true partner to the CEO. Yep. So from my perspective, it's very, very important for senior finance professionals to have an understanding of, as we were saying, not just what the numbers are, but what constitutes how those numbers are created.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think is really important that we need to touch on is about the changing culture of finance. And as a leader, when you look at our journeys, I never thought within a million years that culture and how finance could influence the culture, especially now with the AI tools that we're using. Business partnering was never a thing when I was coming up in my journey. Let's have a talk about the transformation and the change and what finance can do. What do you feel finance can do when it comes to culture change within a business?
I think finance being an intrinsic and core partner to the business stems from creating a culture which provides the right business partnering. And what I mean by that, Rachel, normally is the finance team intrinsically understand the revenue, EBITDA, free cash flow, the core metrics that the CEO or the organization would be measured against, and understand the levers that reach those or can impact those metrics. It's very important to be able to distill that to our commercial partners, to the technology teams, and the wider stakeholder group, which impacts those numbers.
Yeah.
And so for us to move beyond just reporting the numbers, especially in the world where we have more analytics than ever before, with that comes the opportunity to understand the numbers from a granular perspective even better than before, but also help impact because we have access to tools and technology that we never did in the past. Now, as part of the last sort of 5 or 10 years, my teams have comprised of data scientists, data engineers, alongside really incredible finance professionals. And that's with a view to provide the right frameworks to make that change happen, end-to-end solutions, internal consulting type of activity, which helps partner more effectively than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the world where we're moving to enables us to leverage some incredible AI tools, technology, which reduces bottlenecks or dependencies on sometimes solutions that would have taken weeks, if not months in the past.
Yeah.
So that pace and agility, together with a deep understanding of the numbers, provides us with a brilliant framework to be even more successful as true partners to the business.
I absolutely agree. And even when we're thinking about being CFO ready or even being leadership ready, I think there's so much things I want to tell some of these people that are coming up in the world. It's not just about statutory. It's not just about sitting and looking backwards. It's forward thinking. It's understanding. It's getting deeper. It's driving value, but being part of that value creation. If this episode was to reach somebody that's 3 years away from their CFO and finance director journey, what would you like them to hear?
I think for almost all senior leaders within the finance community, from my perspective, there's 3 things that are incredibly important. I think the first one is knowing your numbers. I think it's critical. The way you gain your stripes or credibility within the organization is having a really clear handle on the numbers, not just what we're reporting, but also what are the key sort of levers that impacts those numbers. I think that's one. So knowing your numbers, really important. I think the second most or equally important is people centricity. We've discussed a lot about how people are important. I think creating the right ecosystem for people to thrive is significant, and it's really important for the success of any organization. So making sure that we are emotionally intelligent leaders is for me non-negotiable. Very, very important skill to ensure that the organization is successful, not just our teams, not just the finance function, but the broader organization. And the third thing I believe is forming the right culture or being part of the right narrative, the culture, the tone from the top has to be appropriate. I think from where we are now or the way the finance function and organizations are headed, the landscape is quite focused on AI, data, value creation, governance, ethics. And I feel that making sure that we're embracing and propagating the right culture becomes really important.
Yeah.
The culture is one where we are embracing innovation, we are looking at creating value, we are true partners to the CEO and to the business. And I think I think those three things help us provide credibility through knowing the numbers, making sure that we are creating the next generation of talent, incredibly important, but also fostering the right culture.
Yeah. So we talk about our journey and, some of the decisions we make that led us into our finance leadership journey. How intentional were you about being a finance leader? Was that always the North Star for you? And was it always a clear path?
Not a path that I thought I've created intentionally, Rachel. So as a 16, 17-year-old, I wanted to be a professional cricketer.
Yeah.
I came to England when I was about 17.
Yeah.
I, of course, have not made it as a professional cricketer. But what sports taught me was some of the rigors of discipline, making sure you're looking after a team, making sure that your individual successes or failures don't necessarily have to mirror the team's, and the ability to provide or multiply impact through creating successful teams has had a profound impact on me. And I felt that through my journey from, entrepreneurship, Procter & Gamble, Sky, now Virgin Media O2, what I found is an organization is at its best when groups of people are performing to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
And from that sense, I think, again, I've been fortunate enough to lead lots of really incredibly talented people. But the best outcomes have been when everyone's galvanized towards a single goal and vision.
Yeah.
And you have a leader that can help propagate that and fuel it to provide oxygen, firepower, the right conditions. And at most periods, that provides the organization with not just short-term success, but a long-term plan that works really well. So for me, leadership, providing the right environment, emphasis on people is critical. And that thankfully has worked its way into me leading some teams that have been quite successful.
No, absolutely. And thank you very much for sharing that. That's quite inspiring, because to go from a cricketer to now being working for an incredible business and a very large business as well, to where you are, it's truly inspiring. So thank you very much. And thank you for sitting with us today, and thank you for being on the episode of ACCA's Journey to CFO. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. So we hope that you've enjoyed our conversation and took away some valuable insights. And if you did, make sure you subscribe and engage and share the episode with any of your communities. If you want to find out more about the upcoming episodes, go on the ACCA's LinkedIn page. You'll find more information there. My name's Rachel. I've been your host, and thank you for tuning in to ACCA's Journey to CFO.